Today is Tuesday, March 2nd, 2004, and this is the beginning of an interview with Emanuel Ratner in the Historical Society Cottage at the Westbury Memorial Public Library. Mr. Ratner is 86 years old, having been born on March 15, 1917. My name is Susan Kovarik, and I will be the interviewer. I am representing the Historical Society of the Westburys, an official partner in the Veterans History Project. Mr. Ratner, would you state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in, and what was your rank?
During World War II, I served in the Navy, and my final rank was the Chief Pharmacist Mate.
Where did you serve?
I served at various locations in the States, from Newport to Norfolk to California, and overseas I was at Pearl Harbor, I was at Eniwetok in the Marshall Islands, and a long period of service in Guam, which was in the Mariana Islands.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at the time, and why did you join?
I was living in Brooklyn, New York. I was going to the City College of New York at night, and war was imminent, and one of the professors had been in the Navy in World War I, and he kept telling me, you're going to get drafted, you're going to get drafted, get into the Navy. So I went down, got the information, joined the Navy. They allowed me to finish school, and in August 1941, I went on active duty.
So you were able to finish your education and get your degree?
Right.
And you picked that branch of service because of your professor recommending it?
Primarily from the professor, but I knew I was going to end up being drafted.
Can you tell me about your early experiences after you joined?
Well, another reason for the Navy was that with my college background, and particularly in knowledge of anatomy, physiology, and first aid, they offered me, instead of starting as a recruit, they called it a hospital apprentice first class, which in the Army would have been the equivalent of a corporal. And since the pay was $54 instead of $21, it seemed attractive. There was another reason for joining the Navy. After recruit training in Newport, I was sent to the Naval Hospital in Newport, Rhode Island, for duty. And while there, on December the 7th, I was on liberty in Boston with many other Navy guys, and suddenly the word came through about Pearl Harbor that everybody should return to their ships, bases, and so forth at once. I went out the street with others, and it was turmoil, and all we had to do was just lift up our finger, and we got a ride back to the base. And on the base, they were very concerned. The hospital was right on the waterfront, and they were concerned that the German submarines were going to come and attack. We had those rifles, and they gave us what they called a big heavy-duty gun, and we were stationed along the waterfront in front of the hospital, 50 feet apart, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. We were supposed to be there. This is December, to repulse the Germans that they were coming ashore. It was kind of ridiculous, but we had to do it. After 3 days of this, people were lining up to join the Navy all over the country, and I was sent back to Boston, and from Boston I was sent to Worcester, Mass, and we worked around the clock, recruiting people, doing the physical exam to get people into the Navy. It was utter chaos. We had our hammocks with us, we slept on the table, ate what we can, and this lasted for several months. And then I went back to the hospital, and after a short time the hospital went back on this recruiting duty. In early 43, all these people in the Northeast were sent on recruiting duty were transferred down to Camp Allen in Norfolk, Virginia, into a unit called Lion 6, which was an advanced base outfit. We didn't know where we were going, but we went into very, very active training. My commandos, even though it was medical, we fired 5-inch guns, did all the things for the nation. Well, we never got to go overseas. We found later on after the war we were supposed to go to Italy for the invasion. Anyway, we were transferred to the West Coast, and again went into training, and the way of the military at this camp, we were also sent for cold weather training. We were sent up into the mountains to train for 2 weeks for Siberia, Alaska, or whatever. And then we headed to the ship, the USS Sea Star, which was a transport, and everything that we had was labeled DUVA, D-U-V-A. Nobody knew what DUVA was. It was a complete secret and so forth. We went to Pearl Harbor. We stayed in Pearl Harbor for a while. Then we went to Eniwetok in the Marshall Islands. We stayed there for a while, and after well over 30 days aboard the ship, we were just ready to go ashore any place just to get off this ship where we were sleeping 6 high bunks. It was so hot in the tropics that we would go out on the deck to try to get some sleep at night. Well, we landed finally in Guam, and the invasion of Guam had started. And of course we were very busy, quick setting up aid stations, handling casualties and so forth. Now my job was, originally I was going to be a ward supervisor, a surgical ward. I was going to take care of it. But then it was changed to what was called field sanitation. Mainly, the main part was the water supply. It is a big problem landing on an island and to have potable water. We brought in water in tanks and so forth. We had a truck that we used to go to a reservoir that hadn't been bombed out and get water and so forth. And soon after, we cut the water situation settled. Another big job was the mosquitoes. Everybody that was landing on the island got dengue fever, which is not malaria, but it's really very painful. Nothing you can do except take aspirin at that time and drink lots of water and stuff. So we started, the group that I had working with me, spraying our section of the island, trying to kill the mosquitoes, digging ditches and so forth. And the next step was rodent control. There was rats, millions of them all over the place. I won't go into details on that, but that was another job. And another big job was they had sent with us what was called chemical toilets, which would be fine for 5, 6, or 7 people who could defecate, and then lime was put in to break down the feces. Well, we started getting the temporary wards, 50, 60 people using it, and it just was overflowing. So the pump, the truck we had to pump it out just wouldn't work. We had to get natives, pay them to help us just buck it out and stuff. And meanwhile, the combat was going on. The Japs were being pushed back into a section of the island. And finally, after about 30 or 40 days of combat, the island was secured. What they said was it's secured, but there were thousands of Japanese still left in the jungle. And when the war ended in August, between the end of the war in August and December and January of 46, about 7,000 more Japanese who had not surrendered were killed by the patrols that went out. Outside of these hard parts, duty was good on Guam. The weather was very good. We had high humidity, but it only went up into the high 80s. There was sunshine every day. There was also rain every day, which was warm and comfortable. And once the war ended, it really wasn't a bad place to serve. And I stayed on Guam until November 1945 when I returned home. At the end of August of 45, after the atom bombs, we had been prepared, all of us in our hospital, to go to Japan for the invasion. And the island was just one big, tremendous supply dump. The leading medical people, the doctors and stuff, were prepared for actually thousands and thousands of casualties. And we were training for that too, what we would have to do and so forth. And to this day, well, there's much controversy over this. Personally, I feel very comfortable about the dropping of the bombs, because that's why I'm here. I'm afraid I wouldn't have been here because the casualties were expected. The Japs were going to fight to the last person, no question about it. I returned home December of 45, and I was discharged, and I thought of going back to school to work for a master's degree and so forth, but everything was in a turmoil at that period, the end of 45, beginning of 46. And after a couple of months, I just wasn't happy at home, and I liked my 4 years plus in the Navy, so I went back and re-enlisted for 2 years. I asked for duty aboard a ship or overseas. This was winter. After re-enlisting, I was at a pier called Pier 92 in New York, which was just a place where you could sleep and eat and await shipment. And living in Brooklyn, I could go home every day. I could go down to USO and get, wasn't USO, 99 Park Avenue. We got all kind of tickets and things for meals and so forth. And it was a good couple of weeks. Then one morning I walked in myself and another chief pharmacist's mate. We were ordered up to Sampson, New York. I had no idea where Sampson, New York was. I looked at the map and found out it was in the Finger Lakes section, right off Lake Geneva. And we went up there with the old Lackawanna train with the smoke and the stuff, all night ride to get there. We got there and it was cold. It was very, very cold. Here, having been in the tropics for such a long time, I just hated it. I was put in charge of the barracks where about 300-400 men served. It was a flunky job. I had a lot of lower-rated men working for me. There's really nothing to do. So I went to the personnel office, and it happened to be somebody running the personnel office that I knew. And I said, "Get me out of here. Any place you go yourself, see what you can do." So meanwhile, after a week, there was always somebody, a enlisted senior person who was in charge of the hospital at night, and he got ambulances, taking care of the casualties, calling the doctors and so forth. I was called the night chief master at arms, and the one who had that job suddenly got sick. He had to have emergency surgery. They said, "You're elected. That's your job." And I took over. At least there was something to do. The hospital was so big. It was the tuberculosis center for the eastern part of the United States, and they had about 6,000 TB patients there, and very, very sick people, almost every night, several deaths and so forth. I would go to what they call night chow around 12, 1 o'clock, and they would feed you because you would start about 8:30 in the morning, you were on till 7:30, then 8:30 at night to 7:30 the next morning. And when I ate the evening meal, there were quite a few of the nurses came, and one of them came over to me and introduced herself to come and eat with us. And there I met my future wife to be. Meanwhile, I was looking to get out of there. I just wasn't happy. It was cold. I just couldn't seem to get warm. The personnel officer called me in after about 3 weeks and said, "We got 3 places that you could go to. One is to Washington for a laboratory school, one is to Philadelphia for commissary school, and one is to the hospital in St. Albans, New York for X-ray for a 6-month course." I said, "I'll take X-ray because I've been away from home so long." And it worked out fine. I could come home, see my parents, my brother. And I spent 6 months at the hospital in St. Albans. Became an X-ray technician. And as soon as I finished, I was transferred down to Bainbridge, Maryland, another place that I didn't even know existed. By this time, in September of 46, we had gotten married, and at that time they did not allow married nurses to stay in service. Am I rambling too much? Okay. My wife-to-be liked the Navy and had applied for transfer to the regular Navy from the reserve. It had been approved, but in August of 46, she was called into the chief nurse's office and point blank was asked, "You've been seen going out with an enlisted man, and that is, not allowed," and so forth. Well, she told the chief nurse, "Not only have we gone out, we're going to be married in September." Well, they tore up her papers for transfer to the regular Navy and told her, "You're out of here." Well, the need for nurses was so great that they kept her on till the end of December because they just needed her. Anyway, I got down to Bainbridge, and after a short while, they had housing, housing that had been built during the war was very flimsy with tiny rooms and so forth, but it was still a great place. So as soon as she was officially out, she came down there. Now, at Bainbridge was a tremendous base where they trained recruits at all kinds of schools and so forth. It was a beautiful part of Maryland, really a beautiful base. And they had the national championship swimming team in 1944 and 45. And I had majored in health and physical education in college. I also served as a student manager of the swimming team. We had one of the best teams in the country. And in the Navy, wherever I could, if it was swimming, I got myself involved in it. Anyway, I found out that the swimming coach that they had was leaving the Navy, so I was interviewed and told them my background and experience. Fine, you're the swimming coach. They called over to the hospital. The admiral called over and told the captain that Chief Ratner is going to be our base swimming coach, and he's going to have to let him go whenever as the team travels, or every day. Our practice was like from 4 to 6 and so forth. Well, I went over and found that this swim team of former champions, that was national champions, was now all young high school youngsters. So it was quite different. But we had a wonderful team. We had a wonderful time. We were the best team in the Navy. And the swimming team, actually, the season was over in April of 46. The hospital was closing down. We closed down the hospital. I went to the main base for a while. And by the beginning of July 46, I was transferred again to the Naval Hospital in Corpsman, Virginia, where I worked in the X-ray department. This is actually already 47. And the Navy was very, very big on sports at that time. They had lots of money, apparently, and they had all Navy championships in football, baseball, you can name it. And this was the first worldwide Navy swimming championships. There were teams from Europe, teams from the Far East, from the Pacific, all over. And I was selected to coach the Eastern States team, which was from Maine down through the Carolinas and stuff. We had preliminary meets and so forth. And we went down finally in July of 47 for 6 weeks of just swimming, just training at Jacksonville, Florida. The hospital wasn't happy about having to let me go. They didn't want to let me go. I just told the captain about it. The admiral called over and said, Chief Ratner's the coach, he's going. It was very good. We had good meet. We did very well. When I came back as punishment, at the hospital, they immediately put me on 30 days of night duty. That was the punishment for going. In March of 48, I decided I loved the Navy. It was all in turmoil. Nobody knew how much money they were going to get, how big it was going to be, how many ships. And when, after I was ready to be discharged, they asked about if I realized where am I going. I was told, you will have to take whatever comes. We don't know and stuff. Meanwhile, a friend of mine in Detroit advised me of a vacancy at the Jewish Community Center. They needed an aquatic director. And so my wife and I went out to see Detroit, see the job, and so we decided to take it. I did that for 4 years in Detroit. Meanwhile, since I did love the Navy, I was discharged in March of 48. By May of 48, I re-enlisted into the Naval Reserve and continued this career in the Naval Reserve. We stayed, my wife and I, 4 years in Detroit, and while we both loved the jobs, and she had a wonderful job as the head of psychiatric clinic at Henry Ford Hospital, but the pay for the teaching job, the pay for the nursing job was, those days, very poor. And my father had been in the food business for years before the war. For many years I worked with him. He was asking me to come back. That we decided to move and come back to late spring of 1952. And I ended up into a small sort of supermarket. Because the teaching jobs at that time paid so poorly. It's not like today's teaching and stuff. And this is what I did for 4 years, and then sold that place, went to a bigger supermarket, and was there about 4 years, and then this is my civilian side, ended up in a donut shop like Dunkin' Donuts. Except mine, instead of calling itself Dunkin' Donuts, it was Dunkin' Donuts. This is 1960, the beginning of donuts. It was an easy business, very, very profitable, and so forth. And meanwhile, I continued with the Naval Reserve. I had tours with them of active duty, particularly in the Caribbean and all different places, because I still liked the Navy. And as for my wife, she liked the Navy too, but they didn't allow married nurses. But in 1948, President Truman changed the rule that married women could serve. And she quickly went back, got a commission back, and stayed in the Naval Reserve and kept getting promoted, and also retired from the Naval Reserve. Well, in 1961, this was during the Berlin crisis, the Navy activated me, despite the fact that I had to visit to the 3rd Naval District to work for the District Medical Office. And we were updating the records on people who had gotten out of the Navy but remained in the reserve to find them, their physical condition and so forth, in case we had to mobilize them. And one of the big jobs that I did that was secret at that time, it's not a secret today, everybody was concerned about the atom bomb, of course. And we drew a circle of about 100 miles, let's say, out of Times Square. And we went out there, and my job was to go out and search for places where we could stockpile medical supplies, all sorts of things, in case of an attack in New York City. Some of the big hotels in the Catskills, like Grosinger's, and other places like that, we had stashed stuff away in Jersey and so forth. And, you know, the military and secrets, it was supposed to be all secret, but everybody could see all this water and supplies being brought into places and so forth. And when asked, well, this is like a testing, we're just trying something, because it was hush-hush. Didn't want really the public to know about it, because they'd be so scared. But really, the planning went into this, because they figured if an atom bomb was dropped in New York, all your New York City medical facilities would be gone. And the only place to treat people would be 100 miles out. Anyway, this was my job, and 5 months I served. They wanted me to continue. There was other facets of things that I did, but I said, I have a business, I got to go back to it. So I left and went back to my business. Then in 1968, after 8.5 years in the donut shop, which I had done well financially, but I'm just tired, I sold the place, and I had intended to go in with Dunkin' Donuts, because they were expanding at that time, and they wanted me run one of their places. Of course, what they did was, instead of a new place, which I wanted, we couldn't agree on location. They had some of these stores that weren't doing well. They wanted me to take over. Well, we couldn't agree. Meanwhile, in '69, the Navy approached me again. Would you come back on full-time duty in Freeport, New York, where we had a Naval Reserve Center? You're going to be the chief recruiter for Nassau County, the Rockaways, and part of Suffolk County. And also as a senior enlisted man, I would be what is called the Command Master Chief. You work directly with the commanding officer for the 600 odd people that we had. Anyway, this was a marvelous job. 15 minutes from home, Navy car, expense account, your own boss, and so forth. Well, this lasted till March of '77, when I was 16. That's mandatory that you have to get out. So retired. Meanwhile, my wife had also stayed with the Naval Reserve, retired from the Naval Reserve. She retired from the county as a public health nurse, so everything was good. And in the 7 years plus that I was back on full-time duty. This was during the Vietnam War. I didn't go to Vietnam, but this was Vietnam wartime service. Many of the people that I enlisted, that time, quite a few of them did go to Vietnam, and my wife can back me up, and I've made so many friends from these young people that are recruited that through the years they contact me. I recently, last September, went to a retirement for 5 of the people that I had recruited in 1970 and so forth. So we made real good friends, and since retiring in 77, I've been active in veterans organizations and different things, and having a good life. My wife had trouble with cancer, and she passed away in 1991, and I was alone and so forth. We didn't have children. I met this wonderful lady, and after 2 years of knowing each other, we got married, and we've had a very good life. That's really a pretty good background. I've yet some specific questions you want to ask.
You told me a great deal, yes. Let me see here. I guess one of the things, back when you, during World War II, when you were away from home, how did you stay in touch with your family? Was there entertainment that you went to, anything like that?
You stayed in touch with my mother, just about daily letters and stuff. They had at that time what they called V-mail. V-mail was a small form that you filled out. It was like a photostat, and there was no cost for military mailing and so forth. The funny thing, let me tell you, that when I left for overseas, the only thing we knew, we were going to DUVA, D-U-V-A, okay? And secret, we found out that DUVA actually stood for Guam, G-U-A-M. When it got to Guam, it was in the papers, and everything, it still was a secret. You could not write home where you were or anything. Now, I had given my mother a code. I would highlight some letters, so somehow I highlighted G-U-A-M in different letters. She and my father, figured out G-U-A-M, M-A-U-G. They found on the map there was a small island several hundred miles north of Guam in the Mariana Islands called Morg. A big rock with maybe 100 people on it and so forth. And she wrote back, "Oh, we know where you are. You are at Morg." And I couldn't write back because everything was censored, you see, and tell her that I'm not on Morg. For the longest time, we weren't allowed to be. Maybe after about a year on the island, we were allowed to say where we were and so forth. Finally, got to say. That was really funny. It was great when we were going, all our supplies, everything was marked DUVA, and nobody knew where DUVA was. And after the cold weather training we had, we thought, well, maybe this is a diversion. They're going to take us in the Pacific and then ship us to Northern Japan or Siberia or what. There were a lot of good experience as far as you say entertainment. And one of the things is the American serviceman has got to have things, not like the Japanese were. I mean, they had nothing. No sooner had we landed within days, there was Coca-Cola and beer and so forth. And we were allowed 2 cans of beer, of warm beer a day. I didn't drink beer, so I could always give my cans of beer, somebody to drink beer, and get Coca-Cola instead. We quickly built a movie theater, and we had movies, and Guam being a big, important island because it became the biggest base in the Pacific west of Pearl Harbor. They had USOs coming in, and I never got to see Bob Hope. He was there. I did see Betty Hutton and some other entertainers, USO shows. The other thing was the water around the ocean was nice and warm and so forth. And in one area, which was called Tumon Beach, the Seabees had gone in and blasted out the coral and so forth so that we could have a safe beach that we could go swimming. And in fact, I went back for the 50th anniversary of the invasion of Guam, or the liberation of Guam, because the Japanese took it over during the war. And they had built along this beach at least 25 hotels that could rival Atlantic City in size and stuff. We had about 1,000 people, Marines, Seabees, Navy, Army, Air Force, come back for the 50th anniversary, and the island really treated us well as liberators, which we weren't. They were treated very badly by the Japanese. Other things for entertainment, we had made a ball field. We put up basketball courts. The Americans, wherever they go, are going to have sports. And once the island settled down, stuff started to come in. As I said, we had the beer and the soda and candy bars and so forth, particularly in rations. And this might be of interest. And after the war ended, about a week after the war ended, they went all around the island with loudspeakers and so forth, trying to get the Japanese in the jungle area to surrender. A lot of them came out, a lot didn't. In fact, the last Jap came out of the jungle in 1972. Yeah, it was written up and so forth. How he survived so long. And anyway, we received, for my detail, about 200 Japanese prisoners of war. And now they were like little children. And at first, you hit them, you kicked them, and so forth. But they were so glad to be able to get fresh water and medical care, and we had millions, I should say billions, of K rations, which was a box about this size, with rations, and we gave them a package a day and all the water they could drink and so forth. They really worked whatever we wanted them to do. After about a week, one of the Japanese officers who could speak English came to us and said, they're willing to do anything. Could they have more rations? So we said, we'll give you 2 boxes, 3 boxes a day we had. Because all this was prepared for the invasion of Japan. Well, they were happy. They picked up rock by rock, built a ball field for us. We also had a problem that a reservoir that hadn't been bombed out during the invasion was about 4 or 5 miles from our hospital once. But between the reservoir and the hospital was deep ravines, up and down, and the Seabees were tremendous workers who built our hospital. They just couldn't put equipment into these ravines to run a pipeline. So they had to run a pipeline several miles in a different direction where it was flat, and then bring it back up to the hospital. That's how we got our water, and it wasn't good because you had to have a pump down here, and the pump didn't work. You had a problem. Well, we had all these pipes, we had all the equipment. I explained to the interpreter what we wanted done. 4 or 5 of these little chaps would take this 250, 300-pound pipe on their shoulders, go up and down the ravines, and in 2 weeks, built the pipeline. There were good days and there were bad days, as you know, in the military. But after the initial days, when we cleaned up the island, got rid of the mosquitoes, pretty well cleaned up the rodent population, food improved, although we got meat from Australia, and Australia sent us lamb. Well, it wasn't lamb, it was mutton. It was so fat and so forth that most of us didn't eat it. One day, the cooks really had a treat for us, but it really looked something beautiful. And the first guy that went up and said, "What is this? We haven't seen it before." He said, "They sent us hundreds of rabbits." They all got thrown out. Maybe there were a few guys from mountains or so forth that might have eaten the rabbit. And of course, the well-known spam was a regular fixture for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But overall, I was really fortunate not to have to have been in long active combat and ending up overseas in an island that was pretty nice. And the rest of my time with the Naval Reserve, where I served from 48 to 77, a lot of different things for years. I ran refresher classes at the Naval Hospital in St. Albans until finally it closed in 73. I had a very good assignment. I really enjoyed my Naval Reserve service, plus the fact that it has given me a fine pension and medical care. And, my wife is really surprised. In the last couple of years, the law was changed to, if you're over 65, we have a program called TRICARE for Life, that we can go to any doctor and we get taken care of. The government puts the bills and so forth. So my experience has been a good one. I've had a lot of honors, additional awards and recognition and so forth. And it's 27 years now this month that I'm finally fully retired, and it's been well fulfilled. Anything else?
You said you were active in veterans organizations,
Yeah,
now,
yeah.
a local veterans organization?
Well, I belong to the Disabled American Veterans, which I'm not really active in. I've been very active in an organization called the Naval Enlisted Reserve Association, and I've been the president and the executive director of that association, and still continue to be active with that. I've also served on the Secretary of the Navy's Retirees Advisory Council for 3 years. I was his representative for 3 years in the Northeast. I've served in East Meadow with the Navy Recruiting Command for the Northeast. I've served with them. They don't all volunteer things that I've done. So I've been active. As I've been aging, I've been slowing down a little bit, you can tell.
Do you do other activities now? Are you involved in other organizations? Or do you travel or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, well, we did. After the war, this hospital that we were in, and it was a lot of people between the doctors, nurses, and the enlisted people. There was at least 1,000 people. We tried to have some reunions. Well, at first everybody was busy and just getting started in civilian life. It didn't work. About close to 30 years ago, one of the men that had been there, we also had a yearbook that was printed up with addresses of everybody. Well, about 30 years ago, this one fellow retired, and the addresses in the book, most of them were no good because people got married and started families. He went around from city to city, the post offices, the veterans organization, so forth. We compiled some new lists, and we have a informal organization. Once a year, we hold a reunion, and this has continued, and it's been getting smaller and smaller as more and more people pass away or become disabled and so forth. But we've been very active with that. In fact, I just yesterday made arrangements for the reunion, which is going to be in the Chicago area, that we're going to go to the Naval Base at Great Lakes, Illinois, and we're going to see in October the recruits' graduation, and eat there and visit the Hospital Corps School and so forth. So we've kept busy now. My deceased wife and I made 4 trips to Hawaii. We did a lot of travel all over the country. Since we've been married, we've made 2 trips to Hawaii. We did a lot of traveling. In the past year or 2, my knees and hips have gotten so bad that travel has become very difficult. So we've had to really cut way down. My wife would like to travel more, but sitting in a plane for a long time is really awful hard. And when you're going to be 87, things do change. Okay. Anything else?
Is there anything else you would like to add?
No. For historical purposes, I've been a lucky one to be able to go in the military, serve some war, be able to come back. I've had a lot of things happen to me. I'm 50% disabled with the VA, which entitles me to care and so forth. And the Navy, the VA, has really been good to me. I bought my first house in Hempstead in '55 under the GI Bill, which went very little down. And we've been living now in Westbury since 1965. And if you like Westbury, we really enjoy your library.